Are you aware that diet can massively impact your mood? On today's episode of Mark Bell's Power Project, we dive into it deep with Mikhaila Peterson, who talks about how she has overcome depression through the usage of the carnivore diet. Welcome to Mark Bell's Power Project. Today we have Mikhaila Peterson on. For those of you that don't know who Mikhaila Peterson is, she's become a good friend of mine and my brother's over the last year or so because she is a fellow carnivore. She is also the daughter of the very famous Jordan Peterson. On today's episode, we dove into depression. We dove into the carnivore diet and how Mikhaila Peterson has overcome many illnesses, both mental disease, some physical ailments such as arthritis, and many other issues from the time that she was a child through the usage of the carnivore diet. Diet and nutrition intervention can be really challenging, can be really difficult. But what if it was the one thing that helped change your life forever? Would you give it a shot? In the comments below, I would love to know how you're going to implement some of the things that you hear in today's episode from Mikhaila Peterson. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the episode. He's like, he'd be like, oh, this guy, you know, his penis would have a really deep voice. And this guy, so like every once in a while, he would just like reference it. He'd be like, and he would just have like a zipper sound.
That's funny. Everyone, yeah, I think whenever you would like imitate someone's voice, you'd always go high pitched. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I don't want my penis to have a high pitched voice.
You want it to be well represented. You want to sound like James Earl Jones, right? Barry White, yeah. Right? Something like that.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My bad.
Oh, man, he got kicked out again?
My bad. There we go. You're good to go.
Gracias.
And we're good to go.
We're good to go. We're all set.
We're DTF.
We got a carnivore on the show today.
Yeah.
A fellow carnivore. I'm interested to see like how deep into the diet she has to go, because I think she has some autoimmune disorders and a bunch of other things that seemed like a lot of her life was been riddled with, which really sucks. But it seems like she's doing great. Her podcast is doing really good. We got Mikhaila Peterson on the podcast today. And before we dive into that, today's episode is brought to you by Piedmontese, certified Piedmontese, the best meat that you can get. It's super lean. It'll get you jacked, and you should check it out.
Yes, for more information on the absolute best beef in the universe, and also super macro-friendly, low in fat. Somehow they added more protein to it, but it tastes better than anything you're going to get at the store. We promise. For more information on them, head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for 25% off your order. And if your order is $99 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Yeah, a lot of chicks have been like following the podcast, and I think it's because of the carnivore diet.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of women are also diving more and more into philosophy, because when I've been talking about it on my YouTube channel, I see a lot of comments from women. So I'm like, that's freaking cool. I didn't know. I thought this face was too much for women to handle. I didn't know they were watching.
That's great. Yeah. And then somebody on Instagram, sorry, I can't remember the Instagram handle, but they were like, maybe I'm crazy, but I'm a woman, and I really dig this, this stoicism philosophy. And I think those 2 episodes you guys just did were probably some of my favorites. So I'm like, that's dope. That's
really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to eating meat, I think, through TV and through just a lot of stuff that we've seen over the years, meat and men and like heart disease have kind of all been associated together. And so to have girls talking more about the carnivore diet is fantastic. And to have Mikhaila on today is going to be great, so that women can see it's not just for dudes.
Mm-hmm. So she's still connecting, and we should be good now. Oh, we can't hear you.
She's censored. I feel like we're taking one of those hearing tests.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't done that in years.
You just like start to fakely put your hand up. You're like, I think I'm supposed to hear something. You're like, this guy can't hear shit.
Oh, man.
We'll get her.
Uh-oh.
We'll get her at some point. It's her radio frequency out there in Russia or wherever she is. Where is she?
Canada's not Russia. Or is it?
No, I know, but she's somewhere
But she's-
weird right now.
Yeah, she's
Belarus? No. Belarus?
Oh,
No,
really?
I don't know. She's somewhere strange.
Oh.
Yeah.
Something hard to pronounce.
Mhm. Maybe her Bluetooth's not working? No. I got on a conference call like a week ago, and this guy was like, he was just sitting there and he wasn't doing anything.
Can you hear me now?
Okay,
Oh,
now
there
we
we
got
go.
you.
Yeah.
That's so weird. Okay.
Something weird happened, right?
Yeah, that was strange.
I was going to say, I was on a conference call like a few weeks ago with this guy, and he was just sitting there. Like, I wasn't sure if his screen was frozen or what, but like, he didn't realize that he clicked the link already. And he was like on camera the whole time. He's just chilling, like drinking a soda and eating some food and just like hanging out. And I was trying to talk to him, but he couldn't hear me. And then finally he's like, "How long were you there for?" I was like, maybe like 5 minutes or so. He's like,
That's it.
"Damn."
Embarrassing.
It's like, I hope I wasn't picking my nose and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What's up, Mikhaila? Great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It's good to see you again.
Where the hell you at?
I'm still in Belgrade, Serbia.
You're still in Serbia. Awesome.
Yeah.
What's going on in Serbia? How'd you end up there?
We came here because my dad needed help with damage. He got majorly damaged by benzodiazepines. Major nerve damage. And there were specialists here that said they could help. So we came to Belgrade in the middle of, like, right when it opened at the very beginning of June. And then everything was wide open. So it was strange going from Florida, where everything was closed, to Belgrade, where everything was open. And then everybody here got coronavirus about a month into it. And like, I mean, everybody, if you ask people on the street, most people here say they've had it or they think they've had it. So my whole family caught it. So then we had dad in a clinic. All the people in the clinic caught it. It actually wasn't that bad, but it's been exciting.
The way that your dad
Exciting.
described this drug that he ended up being on for a while just sounded so horrific. I never really heard anyone describe anything like that before. I think he was mentioning like he felt like his whole body was like on fire and he was just in crazy amounts of pain. What's that drug even for?
Benzodiazepines are used to treat anxiety. They're also used if you take a really large dose, they can sedate you for surgical procedures. So they're used a lot in surgical procedures, but at a low dose, they're given out very frequently for panic or anxiety. And he started taking it after we had this autoimmune flare up where he couldn't sleep for a very long time, and he had a whole bunch of body pain from this autoimmune problem, and our doctor gave him a low-dose benzodiazepine and the sleeping medication, and he didn't end up taking the sleeping medication, but he took the benzodiazepine, and at that point, he didn't know, we weren't really paying attention to it, and it turns out, for most people, actually, they're extremely dependence-forming, which means if you take them for like, some doctors think 2 weeks straight, so it's really not very long, then your brain adjusts to them and stops producing, starts downregulating some of the receptors you use for keeping yourself calm. And it turns out, this is what we found out more recently, it turns out one of the scary things benzodiazepines do is they upregulate myelin sheath formation. And myelin sheaths are what cover your nerves everywhere. So if you're on them for long enough, sometimes when you go off of them, then you have myelin sheath damage, and then you're just completely screwed because that's your heat and cold temperature sensitivity, light sensitivity, stress sensitivity, pain tolerance. It's just like everything. And I've had a ton of people reach out to me about their experience taking benzodiazepines. And I've always known about the opiate. The opiate epidemic is pretty well known. Everyone knows, if you take opiates for too long, you're going to have an opiate dependency and they're going to be shitty to get off of if you can get off of them. But I had never heard of a benzodiazepine dependency. I kind of put them in the same category as like an antidepressant, which you're told are safe. So it's just been hell, and he's really really not having a good time from this nerve damage. And nerves take a long time to recover. So it has not been great.
And then how is he doing now?
Like, he's better than he was 6 months ago, but it's slow. Like, the people I've spoken with who've also had really severe damage from benzodiazepines said sometimes they couldn't work for a year and a half, that they were in like just miserable for a year and a half. And then one day it just turned off, which I'm assuming might be the myelin sheath regrowth, just regrows and then they're okay. So from those people, at least, said, just wait. Like, it's just a waiting game. There's really nothing you can do about it other than try and stay in a low stress situation and just wait. So we don't know how long it's going to take, but he's not having a great time, to say the least. Yeah.
And then, when I've asked you, like, I'll occasionally hit you up and ask you how you're doing, because I know that your family's been hit by a bunch of stuff. You dealt with a lot of medical stuff as a child and still continue to do so, I believe. And then your mother was dealing with some stuff, and now it's your dad. And it seemed like all hell's breaking loose in the Peterson household over there.
Yeah, it really did over the last couple of years. Well, weirdly enough, about 3 years, well, more like 5 now, I started to get my health under control. So I started to be able to control my autoimmune symptoms, which were really severe. And I got them completely under control just about 2.5 years ago, completely gone. And then it was like a year of everything was good. And then my mom got this horribly deadly type of cancer that she somehow ended up surviving from. And then my dad's been dealing with benzodiazepine damage. He started to the dose increased when my mom got this cancer, and they told all of us she was going to die. It's been a hell of a couple of years. Hopefully we're on the upswing, but I think it's going to be a while, unfortunately.
And for you personally, how are you doing? How are you doing now? Like, having overcome a lot of things in your own life, your own autoimmune disorder, switching to the carnivore diet, and I think you also mentioned being diagnosed as bipolar. Like, how are you holding up, and how are you doing?
Health wise, I'm doing wonderfully, wonderfully, and I have been really for. Well, I guess it's about a year and a half that's been really good. But I have been steadily for the last 5 years, just getting better and better. So I'm doing wonderfully. I'm not taking any medication. I haven't in a very long time. I have no autoimmune symptoms or mood symptoms. And I'm on, a strict version of the carnivore diet. So I'm just eating ruminant meat and salt and water. And I've been doing that for almost 3 years. I recently tried to introduce some plants just to see what my tolerance was like and if I felt better with a little bit of carbs. And I did, and my autoimmune responses and mood responses to vegetables, as ridiculous as that sounds, although your audience knows, has actually improved on the carnivore diet. So I definitely didn't have the kind of reactions I used to have, which were just catastrophic. But I did stop eating them again because I started slowly getting autoimmune symptoms. But my mood symptoms, I seem to have less of those. But I only tried to reintroduce like certain fruit in pretty small quantities. So it's not like I tried eating a sandwich or something. But so my health, and that's all good. I'm mostly just trying to, stay less stressed with my dad. I've been living out of a suitcase since January 4th. So we went to Russia, and then we were in Florida, and now we're in Serbia. So I'm looking forward to going home. I think we should probably be going home at the end of September, mid-September, maybe.
You said that you guys all got coronavirus. I don't know if you guys all got it at the same time. And you said you kind of just glossed over it and said, it wasn't that bad. But like, what did happen? Like, how did you guys feel?
So like I said, Serbia opened up and then they shut it down. They're like, okay, everything's closed again, kind of. Everyone needs to wear masks. And we went into a pretty strict quarantine because I was worried about my dad getting it because he had pneumonia earlier this year. Pretty severe pneumonia. I was like, well, coronavirus probably isn't good for him right now. So we went into quarantine, and we were all quarantining at the clinic he was staying at. And 11 days into quarantine, we got symptoms. We all kind of got them at the same time, and some of the staff got them at the same time too. So we're not entirely sure what happened. One of us either picked it up before we got in, or one of the staff brought it in. But the symptoms it was like a kind of a flu-ish cold that lasted for quite a while. So I don't think Dad really noticed. When they did a CT scan, they could see it in his lungs. So they ended up preventatively giving him antibiotics, kind of preventatively. And he had a very low fever for a few days. And he probably ended up with about 7 days of most like nausea and bloating kind of. So that was his. For me, I had symptoms for about 18 days. So mine actually lasted longer, but it wasn't the most severe virus I've had in the last year. I get viruses from my toddler all the time. And it wasn't as bad as some of those, but it was like kind of a flu for us. So bloating, nausea, and then just general stuffiness. It didn't end up going into my lungs at all. And I used to kind of be predisposed to bronchitis, so I was happy about that. But it wasn't that bad. I was completely convinced that it wasn't coronavirus, even though the doctors at the clinic were saying, you guys have coronavirus. I was like, there's no way, because it's not that bad. But then, 5 of us got our antibodies. We'd had antibody testing before when we got here, and it was negative. And then we had antibody testing again, and it was positive. And they were worried about my dad, so they consulted some other doctors, and they're like, it's definitely coronavirus. I was like, okay. So, 5 of us got it. My toddler had symptoms too. She ended up same kind of thing, like digestive upset, and she got a full body rash. But like I said, it wasn't the worst cold or virus I've had in the last couple of years. It's definitely not the worst thing that's happened to us this year anyway.
Tell us a little bit about how you transitioned into carnivore diet. Like, how'd you even find out about it, and what kind of led you to even looking into such a ludicrous diet, right?
So I started in December 2017, and I had been doing really, really low carb for 2 years before that. I'd been on a meat and salad diet for a year before I went to the carnivore diet. And the reason I went into it wasn't actually because I'd heard of the carnivore diet. It was because I got rid of all my autoimmune symptoms before I had a baby on a very low carb diet. So I was eating, I couldn't tolerate berries for some reason, but I could do apples, I could do salad, I could do sweet potatoes, parsnips. Like, it was a variety compared to what I'm doing now. And all my autoimmune symptoms and mood symptoms were gone. And then I got pregnant, and after the pregnancy, I couldn't get rid of my autoimmune symptoms again, which was really disheartening because I'd tasted what it was like to be healthy. And then I had joint pain when I was, picking up my baby. Sometimes on my wrist, if I pushed myself up on my wrist would buckle, and I was like, this is not happening. And all I was eating at that point, because I'd cut more and more and more out, I was like, it has to be diet. I fixed it with diet last time. And at that point, I was literally having salad, which was lettuce and apple cider vinegar and salt and pepper, because I was like, I need my vitamins from something. So I just cut the lettuce, basically, and went to meat and thought, well, I'll just do this until I can get my symptoms under control. And then 2 days into the diet, one of my friends who'd been in the Marines and was a Joe Rogan fan had seen Sean Baker on Joe Rogan and sent me that and was like, look, you're not the only one who only eats meat. And then I felt way better because I was breastfeeding at the time. And I was already getting so much hell from my in-laws in particular about not having enough vitamins and not being healthy. And then I went to all meat and it was just like all hell broke loose. But watching Sean Baker's interview made me feel a lot better. And then I've stuck with it since then.
And currently, you talked a lot about having arthritis as a child and like how your joints have, they've just been pretty painful. And I think you also had some surgery too as a teenager on your hips or ankles.
Yeah, hip and ankle replacement.
Okay, so how is that is that improving right now still as you are on this diet?
Yeah, so the actual joint damage, before I managed to get my symptoms under control with diet, I had arthritis everywhere except for my spine. It was extremely severe. And I couldn't sleep at night on my shoulders. And my wrist was just like fucked. So it was bad. And I didn't know the extent of that joint damage. I'd already had my hip and ankle replaced when I was 17. And I was almost certain my wrist was going to be next, my right wrist too, which would have been a huge pain. I'd already been getting cortisone injections into it for swelling. And the arthritic symptoms actually resolved faster than the mood symptoms. It was maybe, when I first went low carb, it was probably 3 months. And the second time when I went to the carnivore diet, it was maybe 2 weeks. And then the joint pain went away. And so now the only joint pain, if I get a virus, I'll get joint pain again. But I feel like lots of people get that. And then I have a little bit of bone changes just from the arthritis. So I still have a tiny bit of pain in my wrist, but everything everywhere else is gone and there's no active arthritis anywhere. So all of my joints have healed. Like my fingers straightened out. My thumbs are still a bit wonky, but they're straightening out. And it's only been, it's probably been about 5 years now that I've kind of had the arthritis under control. But yeah, things are definitely still improving. And they improved quite quickly once I was on the carnivore diet.
Why do you think sometimes women are reluctant to try the diet? We were just kind of talking about that before we hopped on with you today. We kind of hear that meat is like a guy thing or steak is a guy thing. What do you think is some of the reluctancy from women?
Well, some of it, okay, so women generally are more agreeable than men. And for some reason, what we're told is sexy is having a salad. And I think a lot of it has to do with fear of getting fat, honestly. Like, no one is told salads could cause that. And I'm like, and generally speaking, if you're only eating salad, you're not going to be overweight. But I think it's fear of getting fat. And I think it's mainly that. I don't know. And then it's also a compassion issue because you have more women that end up being vegans, and that's certainly a compassion thing. So I would say women are more agreeable, higher in compassion, so less likely to eat animals in that way, and they're worried about gaining weight. It's silly. It's not a good idea. It works from my experience, and I've talked to thousands and thousands of people who've gone onto this diet. Women, particularly the ones that have already had kids, are some of the people who need this kind of diet the most, because you end up with a whole bunch of, if you're unlucky, you can end up with a whole bunch of food sensitivities after pregnancy, and this solves that problem. So it's really a shame, but it's probably the people not knowing enough too, because they think, there's ways to do this diet that's sustainable and that's nice to animals, right? Like you can get grass-fed beef from a local rancher. It's like, that's what vegans are looking for, kind of. So yeah, that's my answer to that question.
Well, so going back to the most womanly thing ever, having a baby and nursing, did that improve when you switched over from essentially a plant-based to a meat-based diet?
Well, I was never plant-based, ever. This is the funny thing about this diet, too, is I always ate a lot of meat. For my entire life, I ate a lot of meat. I was never vegetarian. I always knew meat was a health food. My grandpa was a hunter, and I never thought it wasn't a health food. I thought that was silly. So technically, when I went from meat and salad to meat, I really just dropped the lettuce. I didn't even start eating more meat. I was probably eating more meat before that because I was pregnant before that. So it was really dropping the plants that helped me, not just increasing my consumption of meat, which is interesting. But yeah, my breastfeeding went better. Everything improved. I lost about 10 pounds, which you could argue is water weight. But after I had my baby, there was about 15 pounds I couldn't lose, and I was eating meat and salad. And I was like, what is going on? I guess this is like something that happens during pregnancy. And I lost that right away. Breastfeeding was easier. My milk flow was more after I started the carnivore diet fairly quickly. My daughter used to get stomach aches sometimes after she breastfed, and I noticed that increased if I had something like collard greens, which I loved. So I cut out the collard greens. That's also part of the reason I got to just lettuce. But when I went to just beef, her stomach ache stopped, and cradle cap she had went away. So it made a big difference. And I've spoken with other people, because I generally tell women are scared, especially if they're breastfeeding and they have this obligation to another being to be as healthy as they can be. So they'll email me and say, hey, I feel better on carnivore, but I'm really worried. And I generally tell people, do whatever makes your body feel the best, because you know when you're healthiest. You know when you eat something that doesn't make you feel good, especially if your diet's pretty clean. Just do what makes your body feel best, and that'll probably be the best for your baby too.
Does your daughter, I don't know if you're comfortable talking about her with this, but I mean, your dad, he has a lot of the similar issues that you have. Does she have any food intolerances also? Does that pass on, or is she cool?
Well, we haven't tested it out. So she's cool, but her diet's limited. Like my husband, when I met him, he had some pretty severe, not like me. He wasn't diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, but he was extremely depressed and he had joint issues, and he cleaned up his diet and that all resolved. So we've been very, very, very careful with my daughter, because I think that none of what I have, according to the scientific community, is inherited or genetic, but they don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So we've been very careful with her, and her main food is meat, and she basically eats meat and fruit and some vegetables, but it's like 80% meat, and she's fantastic. She never has tantrums. The only time, and this sounds insane, but the only time she's had a tantrum was when my mom was babysitting her and gave her sausages that had sugar in them. That can happen. And she screamed for 2 days. What? One of those ones where you shake your crib and scream bloody murder for 2 days. And that was the only time she's had a tantrum. So I think you can get a lot of that evil 2-year-old demon child thing out if you're not hyping them up on sugar all the time. But I don't know. I think that if she was eating a standard American diet, I don't know how she would feel. But given her screaming response to sugar, probably not great.
Are any special types of meat or any specific types of meat for your baby?
We started because what I was doing for the carnivore diet was just ruminant meat. So mainly beef and lamb. We started her with beef, but she eats any type of meat and pretty much any type of fruit. And then we're just smart about it, right? If she eats too much fruit, she'll get bloated. You can see that. So okay, that's too much. Don't feed her that much. She'll get a little crabby. Okay, that's too much fruit, too much sugar. Just have less tomorrow. So you can kind of just judge. And I think starting really slow when you have a kid isn't a bad thing, because then you can introduce one food, see how they react to it, introduce another food, see how they react to it. But yeah, she's eating, like I said, mostly meat, mostly beef, lamb. She likes chicken.
What does your diet look like? Do you guys cook meals at home a lot? Do you get a chance to eat out? Do you cave into eating something weird here and there, despite the negative impact it might have on you?
I don't do any kind of cheating, ever. I didn't eat anything other than beef for an entire year. And then I introduced lamb. Then I introduced lamb, and that was totally fine. And then I didn't eat anything other than beef and lamb for another year. And then I introduced wild salmon, and that seemed to work out, which was great. And then, like I said, a couple months ago, I was like, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm more tolerant now, and maybe I'd feel better with some carbs, considering before the pregnancy, I could do that with no autoimmune problems. So I did try, but I'm done with that now. So for 1 month out of the last 3 years, I tried other things. I don't have any spices. I seem to tolerate tea now. So there's definitely some healing going on, but it's slow. And I think I'm going to be stuck pretty limited, possibly just on the meat diet for a significant amount of time. I definitely felt bad enough reintroducing some fruit that I'm probably going to put that off for another year. But anyway, to answer the question, we eat at home most of the time, but for the first year also I ate at home because I was too worried about going out because of cross-contamination, because I was so sensitive. But now I know how to order in restaurants, and I really haven't had issues in a very long time. So we go out quite a bit. Ordering a plain steak with no seasoning, especially in Europe, is actually pretty easy. In North America, especially if it's lower end, then they kind of put stuff on it. So you have to be very specific, like no oil, I say no salt and pepper, like completely plain. I want meat on a plate. That's what I say when I order. I want meat on a plate with nothing else on the plate. They're like, okay. But some of the places in Toronto have gotten used to us, so that makes it easier.
You know, your audience is so big that, you've talked to a lot of individuals that have come to you with specific issues, and going carnivore has changed it. I'm really curious because you said, and you've talked about in the past, the type of depression that you had and how switching your diet aided with that. Now, I don't know exactly how that is with you now. So if you can describe that, but I also want to know, from all the people that have come to you or talked to you about issues like that have made the switch, have you noticed a correlation with an elimination diet, along with helping with mood disorders?
Yes, for sure. The only time, and I'm serious about this, the only time I haven't seen it work is if that person was taking benzodiazepines, which is unfortunately what my dad was taking. And then I've seen people go to strict beef and weight, and it hasn't really helped them. Other than that, I've seen OCD, schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, all those things alleviate. And the time frame seems to be somewhere between, some people it's fast. Some people with anxiety, especially the anxiety that's like in the morning, or it's not anxiety enough to be desperate, that can be like 3 days. I've seen that happen. So that's fast. And then sometimes, especially if it's severe depression where it feels like you're walking through mud and it's just debilitating, that's like 6 weeks to 5 months. So sometimes that can take a little bit longer. For people who have MS and a mood disorder, that seems to take longer. And I think that's because it's a nerve problem and nerves take longer to regenerate. It seems like joint pain is one of the things that's faster. It's relieved faster. Mood takes a little bit longer. But yeah, I've seen this happen over and over and over again. And it doesn't seem to not work unless you're taking medications that can mess with that. But it's difficult for people because they have to stick to it for at least 6 weeks. And the 6 weeks aren't fun. You go through, if you are a coffee drinker, you go through caffeine withdrawal, you go through sugar withdrawal, which is brutal. Like, that was hard for me. And I got off of OxyContin. When I had my hip and ankle done, I was on high dose OxyContin for a year. And I got off of that, and getting off of sugar was more difficult, but less physically like nasty. So it's hard for people to do. And especially people with mood disorders, they're so, like, some people are so crazy that they're like, now I'm trying this meat diet, which is also insane and it's not going to work. And then if they start feeling worse, like they go into sugar withdrawal and they have a mood disorder, they're like, what am I doing? And then they stop. So like if they stay on it though, for like a 6 week period, it seems to be really effective.
You know,
all of it is a better option than like ending up in a wheelchair or something like that, though. Like for yourself, I mean, that could have been the result. You could have had, I know you had a replacement and stuff like that, but if you would have continued down that path of eating unhealthy, then what would happen to your other hip? What would happen to your other ankle? What would happen to your knee? Mm-hmm. So I'm sure, yes, brain. It sounds like it would be really, really hard to get past those weeks. But I guess if you could keep the overall picture in mind and maybe understand that, hey, you know, this is going to suck, but it's going to lead to a better version of me. I just need to figure out a way to, how did you personally hang in there? How were you able to kind of tough it out?
I was pretty desperate. Seems like desperate. If you have the comparison of an autoimmune disorder, then those people seem to have an okay time sticking to it, because it's like they're already suffering so much that you add in a little bit more suffering and it sucks, but just being alive is so shitty that it's like, we'll just wait this out, because if it works, like that would be a miracle. So how did I stick it out? I don't know. I was just giving it a shot in kind of a scientific way. Like when I cut out most things and went to a really, really low carb diet, I just did it as a science experiment. It was like, okay, realistically, like these are the foods I can eat. I cannot cheat or that'll mess up the science experiment. I have to do it for at least a month, because what difference is a week going to make? So I just treated it as an experiment. And when I went to all meat, I thought I'll do this for 6 weeks. And I won't cheat once or it'll mess up the experiment. And then I just did it. I don't know if that answers the question at all, but that was my experience.
You know, I know that, first off, giving medical advice is very sketch in general. Like, cause I was curious, you know, you mentioned that you got off of OxyContin and you also got off of other medications. And obviously people that hit you up probably have the question of, hey, Mikhaila, how do I do this? Because my doctor doesn't want me to get off these medications, and they probably think this diet's crazy. So how can people navigate those waters when their doctor is telling them, hey, you have to keep taking this, you can't get off, but you know, they want to, and they want to give it a shot?
So I'm probably less careful than I should be, because I'm so irritated about what I went through. And I got so much, like when I first went low carb and my symptoms started going away and I stopped taking my medication, I had to lie to my rheumatologist that I was still on my immune suppressants so that he would keep seeing me, because you're allowed to fire the patient if they're not listening to you. But it was like, well, I still need someone to monitor my arthritis. So I've had such terrible experiences with the medical system, not paying attention to the fact that I did a 180 with health. Like I couldn't even remember questions people asked me or repeat phone numbers back to them. I was so screwed up. So I'm probably less careful than I should be. But if people ask me, like, should I stop taking this medication? I don't answer those questions. Like, what I did was I did stop some of the medications before my symptoms went away. I stopped my immune suppressants so that I could monitor the arthritis properly, to see if I was having flare-ups. But something like the antidepressant that I was on, I didn't think the depression was ever going to leave. I thought it was a genetic problem, because there's some sort of genetic problem, and that I was stuck with it forever. So I didn't actually stop taking that until the depression left. So a lot of the time I say, you know what, try not to be that concerned about it. Get your symptoms under control, and then you can talk to your doctor about getting off your medication. If you don't have symptoms, then there's no reason to be on them. So yeah, I should probably be a bit more careful. But also, if you don't talk about it, nobody knows about it. And then everyone just goes on thinking they're doomed with whatever horrible health problem they have forever. That's worse, I would say, than risking telling people what I did.
How long have you suffered from depression? Like when did that manifest into a problem that ended up being crippling, or ended up leading you to even go to a doctor?
Symptoms started when I was in grade 1. So I used to come home from school and cry. I didn't cry at school, but I'd come home from school and cry. And then my dad realized that what he was suffering from and his dad was suffering from was depression. When I was in about grade 4 and when I was in grade 5, it started being uncontrollable. I couldn't sleep very well. I was having nightmares, like terrible nightmares. I was starting to get panic attacks. I had these it was nasty. I had these OCD tendencies of reorganizing things in my room until like 4 or 5 a.m. So I wasn't sleeping. And then I started getting into fights with my friends. And I remember getting into this one fight, and I was so angry, and I can remember slamming my door and being like insanely angry and thinking this kind of response doesn't make any sense to the situation that just occurred. And a few years before that, my dad had started taking an SSRI for his depression, and he brought me to a doctor so that's what happened. And then I started taking an SSRI, and the SSRI actually helped a lot. Like, I don't know how I would have survived high school. Ideally, I would have found a diet, but we weren't looking at that at all. So the SSRI honestly probably helped keep me alive through high school, but it's a hell of a lot better not being on them and depressed, half poisoned or whatever.
Were there other techniques that you utilized to manage it, or was it mainly just the medication helped?
No, I just used the medication. I tried exercising. It was so bad that nothing else worked. Exercise made no difference. And I was on sports teams and things. It made no difference. Like the things I generally suggest to people now, I find an infrared sauna can be really helpful. But I was so screwed up that there wasn't anything that would have worked other than diet. Like doing exercise or meditating. Like I used to write. If I got really angry, I used to try and write. But no, like no, there wasn't anything else. Thank God for diet.
Where did your depression come from? Any idea, or is it just something that just manifested because you're you?
Because I'm me. Well, like I said, my grandpa and my dad have the same depression. It's a very severe depression, like brain foggy, horrible, tar-like depression. And I assume, I don't know, a lot of people with autoimmune disorders also have mood disorders, and it's probably just general level of inflammation, and some people are more prone to it. But I think it has to do with brain inflammation. And when I got my diet under control and my level of inflammation went down, then that went away. Thank God. Other than that, I have no idea where it came from. Luck. God.
If you can describe to the audience, because a lot of them understand that you had a lot of joint issues, you dealt with depression, which a lot of these things have gotten better. But what else? Because when I've seen some of your videos, there was like so many things that you said that you dealt with that are now better that I couldn't keep track. So if you could just help them understand, I really couldn't. If you could help them understand the other things that you were dealing with that have improved or gone away.
Yeah, no problem. That's a good question anyway, because some of the other things are more widespread, I would say. Everything that bugged me about my body stopped when I got better and changed my diet. And these were things that I had kind of ignored. So I used to have mouth ulcers. My gums used to bleed when I brushed my teeth. I had constant bloating. I had quite severe lower back pain that had nothing to do with arthritis. That went away. I had this, to make matters worse, after I had my hip and ankle replaced and I went to university, and my diet, like I was eating like a university student, which was like pizza and beer. And I got so ill, and I started getting this blistering rash. And that's actually what led me to food, because I had this blistering rash and I was like, that is too many things. I can't handle this like bipolar arthritis combination with a blistering rash. That was one too many. And that's how I kind of linked it to gluten, because it turns out I finally figured out what the rash was, which took like 2 years. And it was gluten. So there was a rash as well. I had terrible skin in other ways. Like I had acne. What else happened? I used to soak the bed with sweat at night, which was really unattractive for dating. But just like, and it was a disaster. When I was in university and I got sicker, it just got worse. And at points I was wearing pajamas to bed, waking up in the middle of the night to take them off and sleeping on a towel. Like I was just like sweating at night, and I think my body was trying to detox. I didn't smell or anything. It was just sweating. I had no heat tolerance. So I was overheated all the time. I had eye floaters. My nose was stuffy in the morning. That was like, these problems were like the minor versions of my problems. Like wake up with a stuffy nose. It was annoying, but, let's see. I think that covers most of it. There was definitely more, but those are some. Oh, I used to get a slow period. This is something that most people get. If they get like a slow period around 4, and that's when people have like a muffin or something to give them a pick-me-up, that slow period was because of whatever I ate for lunch. Just giving like a dip. So I don't get any slow periods now. Like I wake up in the morning, I'm awake. I had an impossible time waking up in the morning. I'd have like a whole bunch of alarms. I'd feel like I couldn't lift up my body. The other one was I was diagnosed with idiopathic hypersomnia, which was just like chronic fatigue. That was horrible. That was probably as bad as the depression, if I had to order the things that were wrong with me. And that went away. That actually went away about 3 months into the low carb diet when I first cut out like most of the inflammatory foods. So I was taking Adderall for that. I think that covers most of what the problems were.
You seem to be really positive, and you look great. You look like you're really healthy now. Like, I think it's really inspirational that you were able to overcome a lot of these different issues. When you look back at these things, are they in the rear view mirror, or can they kind of creep up on you at any time if you kind of go off the diet? And even like with your depression, like, will that sometimes certain things hit and you're like, oh shit?
No, even the last 2 years of having my like parents nearly die repeatedly, it was that was stress. Like that was major stress, but it's different than a mood disorder. They don't feel the same. Like, I don't know which one. I wouldn't say that the mood disorder was worse or better, which is saying something if you're dealing with like possible death. But anyway, are things in the rear view mirror? Yeah. When I first got better, it's amazing. If you stop feeling ill, it's amazing how fast you can forget, which is, I guess, why people have more than one child, right? You don't remember pain. So when I first got better, I thought, I was on this really restrictive low carb diet, and all my friends thought I was crazy. And I was like, I'll just, whatever, this is good. I'll just stick on this diet. I'm just not going to tell anyone. I'm not going to talk about it. And then I kept trying to reintroduce foods, and I had these horrible reactions over and over and over again. And after about 10 of those reactions, I thought, okay, I have to make a blog or something and tell people, because if there's one person out there that's experiencing this insanity of like a mood disorder and autoimmune symptoms linked with food reactions, then they have to feel like they're not alone, because it was so isolating. And that's when I started the blog and I started to talk about it. But the longer I've been on the carnivore diet, the more it fades. Like if I ever get joint pain from a cold or something, it's not terrifying. It's annoying, but I know it'll go away. I was quite concerned when I tried to reintroduce plants, because I had a very severe mood disorder. I didn't want to be totally screwed for like 3 weeks. But my tolerance seems to have gone up, and I didn't go crazy or anything when I reintroduced that. So yeah, I would say I'm feeling pretty safe the longer I'm on this diet. And I've been hit with, like, at the beginning, I was scared of spices. I was scared of restaurants. And the longer I'm on it and the more those kind of experiences I have, the more sure I am about how I'm feeling. So yeah, I would say it does fade if you start to feel better.
So do you think carnivore like healed you, or would you say it's more of you're just smarter about the way you handle your food, and then maybe even just having a little bit less than what you were having before?
I think here's my theory behind it. I think I had severe gut damage, so leaky gut. And I think that everything I was eating, and I know this through a number of blood tests I did, because you can test to see sometimes if certain food particles show up in your blood, and they shouldn't, right? They should be going through you. You should, if you eat something, it shouldn't be in your blood. And these food particles were showing up in my blood. So therefore I think I had severe leaky gut. And I think removing the plants stopped my immune system from reacting to them, and only eating meat allowed the leaky gut to heal. So I think part of the reason I could reintroduce plants a month ago and not have horrifying reactions is because my gut is less permeable than it was. So, and then I've talked to a number of doctors who've actually used the carnivore diet for a number of years, way before it's, gotten more popular. Like, there's this diet called the GAPS diet, which has been around since, I think, the 90s. And that's a Russian doctor. And she treats people with mood and autoimmune disorders and whatnot with an animal-based diet strictly, and then allows them to introduce foods back in. And her theory is the same, that it's leaky gut, but that people with autoimmune disorders kind of have to just stay on it. And, well, from my experience, I might be stuck on it, but it's so much better than having an autoimmune disorder that it doesn't even matter.
For you, what plants tend to be, and maybe also because, again, so many people have come to you with some of these issues and they're reintroducing food. So when people do start reintroducing certain plants, what tend to be the most, the more difficult ones to deal with? Like, I think you mentioned that you're eating some lettuce, right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, I'm just on ruminant meat,
okay.
And I'll be like that for a while. But there's definitely a scale of what's most irritating to the immune system. Grains are right at the top. Those are really hard for people to digest. And there's literature on this, particularly gluten-containing grains that can increase gut permeability. So people seem to, especially people with autoimmune disorders, but just in general. So grains, I'd put at the top. Legumes, and that's kind of so soy, which isn't everything. That's kind of understandable, because even just to eat those, you need to do something like pressure cook them to make them edible. So legumes are at the top. That's what I was mostly reactive to, were grains and legumes and dairy. And I know a lot of people on the carnivore diet eat a lot of dairy, but dairy was extremely inflammatory for me. And I didn't respond well to eggs either. So it was really meat that helped. But I'd say if you only want to if you don't want to do a carnivore diet and you want to be healthier, if you get rid of grains, legumes, limit dairy, and stop eating processed foods, and you're a healthy person, you can probably just do that. So there's definitely, and then when I tell people to reintroduce, we start with things like carrots, parsnips, berries. If you pressure cook things, then they're easier for people with gut damage to start with. Root vegetables, although generally I don't do nightshades like potatoes right off the bat. So we start with like easier to digest things that you might feed babies, other than, I guess babies eat everything right now, but like carrots, parsnips, apples, stuff like that.
Yeah, babies usually have food that has one ingredient. You want to try to, have, and I think that that's a great rule for a lot of people to follow. I think when we start to mix a lot of ingredients is when we start to, maybe really run into some trouble. With your depression, maybe you can help somebody that's listening right now that either has depression or has a child that has depression. What are some things to maybe like avoid? Like, I would imagine it takes a great deal of work on yourself. You mentioned that you had medication and that seemed to be helpful, but I would guess that in today's day and age, like with social media, just even people having relationships, like I don't know if you can speak on your own relationships. Like I would just imagine that that's really hard. I have a lot of friends that have been diagnosed as bipolar. My oldest brother pretty much died from being bipolar. And I know that it's recommended a lot of times from a therapist. They'll say, hey, I'm sorry, but you can't have a relationship. It's because you don't have a relationship with yourself that's intact yet. And so they're not going to say like, hey, you need to break up with whomever you're with. They're going to say, hey, I wouldn't advise that you even bother looking just at the moment, because let's make sure that you can get your own kind of thoughts. What are some things that you think people should maybe kind of look out for? Like, I would imagine social media just might be a little more dangerous until you can get yourself in a strong enough position to be able to resume.
Yeah. Well, I can understand if a therapist would say avoid relationships, because even when I was on antidepressants, like I was crazy. So it was not good. Relationships were not good. I was extremely volatile. Like, it really wasn't manageable. I generally tell people, if they have a mood disorder, having a mood disorder is miserable. Having a mood disorder, especially a severe one, is way worse than the arthritis I experienced. They're not even in the same universe. It just destroys your life. And so for those people, I say, like, what is there to lose? Try the diet for 6 weeks, because if it works, that's huge. Like, taking medication, it doesn't work. The antidepressants I was on probably saved me from doing myself in, but I wasn't not depressed. I was just numbed. So I say, even before exercise or anything, because like sometimes you're so sick, you literally can't get out of bed. And so for those people, like, just control what goes into your mouth until you feel better. Other things, and really the reason I say that is because really nothing else worked for me. Like, I tried a lot of things and nothing worked until I fixed my diet. And then other things could work. Like, now, if I'm feeling down, exercise will make me feel better. Getting in the sauna will make me feel better. Getting in the sun will make me feel better. But that's like, a 20% increase in mood when I'm not depressed. When I was depressed, it made absolutely no difference. Social media, I can't imagine is good for people. It's definitely not good for body image, but also if you avoid it, then it's not great. Like, I think we kind of have to figure out a way to adapt with it. Otherwise, you can't tell your kid not to use social media, right? Because how are they going to have, not how are they going to have friends, but kind of, you can't, like, what, you don't have Facebook, you don't have Instagram, you're going to be an outcast in school. So telling them not to use it isn't really sustainable. I know my family tried to put, like, my cousins, they tried to put time limits on it, which is probably a good idea. But honestly, I just go straight to diet. Try and clean up your diet. If you have a kid that's depressed, like, get rid of some of the more inflammatory foods. Even just getting rid of the gluten containing grains might make a difference. And that's a good test. That's actually the smallest test I tell people who really aren't willing to do much. Go gluten-free for a month and then eat a bunch of gluten. And if you feel significantly worse, then food has something to do with it. Like, and that's, you can pretty much convince people to do that because they make gluten-free everything now. And that's a good test just to see if you're not convinced that food has anything to do with your mood.
We eat pretty healthy, all three of us in this room, and we'll come in every once in a while with a story like, oh man, I just spent the whole, like, sorry, I'm 20 minutes late because spent the whole morning on the toilet. And it's because, we just ate a burrito, or we ate something that was off plan. So it's interesting because, when you normally eat bad, I just think that you start to think things are more normal. To have a lot of gas or to have problems in the bathroom or any of these things, you just kind of, you're like, yeah, this is just the way it should be. And for me, I didn't realize, like, in my powerlifting career, when I got as big and as strong as I could, I could squat and bench and do certain things, but I could barely tie my shoe. Or, doing something like lunges or something like that would give me tons of pain in my knee. And so I think as we move forward, we're always kind of just thinking, oh, well, these things are just kind of part of it. This is just sort of part of my life. This depression is probably fairly normal, so I'm not going to talk to anybody about it. These things are just normal. Oh, I'm a teenager. This is normal. And I think we just kind of accept these things. But when something's not feeling right, it's probably not right. And you should probably, start to investigate. Like, what's it going to hurt if you just kind of look into it, research it? Like you said, why not? Why not try to eat a little healthier? Did you notice when you switched to the carnivore diet, was there a 2 or 3 day or 2 or 3 week adjustment period to it? Or did you instantly start to feel a little bit better? Because I know sometimes someone will go like, well, you mentioned you went low carb, but some people will go low carb and they're like, yo, like I feel like crap. I feel like shit. And they maybe don't realize like, hey, you know, if you got to it might take a little while to start feeling better.
Yeah. So my transition into carnivore was rough, and I literally dropped lettuce. So I didn't have you wouldn't think that made much of a difference, but it did. It made a major difference. My arthritis probably improved within 3 days. I was at that point, because I was not taking any medication, but I was experiencing all my symptoms. So I was crying in the mornings, and that went away in 3 days. I had full body itching. That went away in 3 days. Then the depression left in 6 weeks, and anxiety took 5 months. But my digestion was a mess for like 6 weeks. And I've spoken with a lot of people, particularly the ones with autoimmune disorders, and generally, and Joe Rogan, when he tried the carnivore diet, he experienced this too. Generally speaking, if you go to the carnivore diet and you're not 100% healthy, not to throw Joe under the bus or anything, you get diarrhea. And that can last anywhere between 3 days. Generally, it's 2 weeks, which is quite a long time. And for me, it was more like 6. And for people with autoimmune disorders, it seems to last a long time. And I think that has to do with a couple of things. One, your microbiome does change when you go to a carnivore diet. If you're not consuming carbs, then your carb-consuming bacteria die off. And I don't know if they had anything to do with the problems I was experiencing, but I'm only healthier on it. So I don't know if it's a problem that they die off. And they do seem to come back if you start eating carbs again. But yeah, there's definitely a transition. There's a huge transition if you go from the standard American diet to the carnivore diet. Because like I said, you can go into caffeine withdrawal and sugar withdrawal. And so going into withdrawal is not going to make you feel better. So that's why you have to do a 6-week period, and you just have to suck it up for like 6 weeks to see if it works. And if you're only there were a couple of newspaper articles where they're like, I did the carnivore diet for 2 weeks and it was miserable. And it was like, yes, it is miserable for 2 weeks. So you just have to wait. And most people, I think, don't have like a great time for the first month or so. But then I've seen some people, generally the healthier ones. I had this guy from Silicon Valley messaged me, and he's like, I stopped eating. He was like on a burrito diet. Speaking of burritos. And he's like, yeah, I just switched to steak because it was easier. And I was like, I don't really want to cook anyway. And he felt better in 3 days, but he didn't have anything wrong with him, really. He was just like, I don't want to cook, or I just want to be slightly faster. So it depends. If you're healthy, you're probably not as interested in going on the carnivore diet, but it's probably going to be easier than if you're unhealthy.
I know this is probably like just a minuscule question, but do you stay, like when you cook your meat, do you just stay away from like oils and stuff, or you just cook it straight?
Yeah. If anyone takes away anything from this episode, I would say get an air fryer. I have a Ninja air fryer. Air fryers, they're like number one life hack.
Yes.
Right? So yeah, I'm glad that's literally how excited I am about air fryers. I've been advertising them for free on YouTube, or on Instagram. Like, you need to get an air fryer. And I just take a frozen steak, because if you cook it from frozen, then it's crispier on the outside and not cooked on the inside. You just put it in for like 10 minutes aside, depending on how thick it is. Thicker is better because it gets crispier on the outside. Cook it at 200. I spend 30, I have a YouTube video, and it's like how to spend 30 seconds a day cooking. And then you just put the whole thing in the dishwasher. There's nothing involved. It's so easy. So yeah, I don't use oils. I use an air fryer. Or if I do decide to cook something like a burger, is probably better fried, I use beef tallow for oil.
Cool. I think that's the best part of this episode.
Like, get an air fryer. It's so worth it. I wish I had one in university when I was eating pizza. It would have been like, you can cook you can cook chicken wings in there. It's great.
Everything.
With your dad's popularity, what has some of that been like for you? Positive, negative?
There hasn't been a lot of, wow, that's not true. Never mind. I'm just being, that was overly positive.
Like, I mean, anything he does, I mean, he's so, he's polarizing, but he's also counterculture in a lot of ways. And maybe people think that everything that he says is your same views, and people get triggered. People get really upset. I've seen people at his lectures, screaming at him, and things like that. And have you been subject to any of that? Do people just come on social media and just grill you because they're like, your dad's an asshole or whatever? Or is it, I love him, and I know a lot of other people have gotten tremendous value from, I've texted you all the time, like, I listened to another thing from your dad. So there's millions and millions of people that love him, and he's sold millions and millions of books and everything like that. But what about the kind of maybe negative side to it too?
So in actual human to human interaction, there is no negative side. Like, if anyone comes up on the street, it's always positive. I don't think I've ever had a negative experience that way, but on social media, yeah. And I get haters from people who don't like my dad. And there are like extreme leftists and extreme right people who don't like dad. So I get both of those sides. And then I also get vegans. So social media can be stressful. Like Twitter is probably the most stressful one. Or if but most of the negativity that's been directed at me hasn't really had anything to do with dad. Honestly, it's mostly just been purely directed at me, which I'm not sure if that's better or worse. But with dad, like a lot of that is people coming up on the street, and that's just purely positive.
Have you kind of maybe learned, because you're talking about all these things that you're opened up to it, right? Like that's the way I look at it. And I'm just like, you know what? I talk about all these different things, so I'm subject to people, flaming the shit out of me. And I'm totally fine with that. What I don't like is when it reflects like my team or a friend or especially family like that. That does hurt. That is really frustrating. But if it's just me, I have learned to not give a shit about it.
Yeah, I've had, I think the hardest thing I've dealt with is people giving me shit this year because I've been like taking care of dad throughout this for 8 months. And it's been the hardest. Don't add to all
my bullshit that I'm dealing with.
Yeah, and it's been really hard. And it's been the hardest thing I've done. And I've done some hard things. And like this year has sucked. And so there are people online that are like, what are you doing to your dad? And it's like, you have no idea what's going on here. And those things, once you're already stressed, then those will bug me. But again, like that's what happens when people know of you because they stop thinking of you as a real person and then just say whatever they want. So yeah, it's tough sometimes. I find Twitter the worst one.
What about exercise? We talked a little bit when I was on your show about some exercise. Have you, do you walk? Do you run? Do you lift? I know you've mentioned, I think running would be too hard because your ankle, but what do you got for exercise?
Yeah. Right now, walking and then doing floor exercises. And I'm pretty much just there. I tried starting to lift, but I had my ankle replaced January 2019. And that was a 1.5 year healing time fully when I wasn't supposed to do a lot. And I tried pushing that a couple of times and then put myself back. So right now it's walking. And the left side of my body, because of my ankle, is so weak that walking is good enough. So I'm at the walking point. But I think after maybe 6 months or 4 months of like trying to build up atrophied muscle, I can probably more safely do gym stuff. It's just like my left side's pretty wobbly, so I need to start slow.
You started up your own podcast, and that seems to be going really well. I think you're 20 episodes in or so?
Yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. That's the one thing, like, Eric's my sound guy, and he's the one who like pushed me to do it. Was like, I think you'd be good at it. You should start it. And I was like, life is in the way. But that's been one of the things that's actually really helped give me a break, or doing podcasts like this, because it puts you somewhere else for an hour or so. So I've been really lucky to talk to a very large number of interesting people, and it's great. It's like I can decide what I'm interested in and then talk to someone who's a specialist in whatever area that is. It's crazy. So, and people seem to like it. So it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it.
I know you have limited time, but I was curious, after one of your lecture videos, I saw that you said you're trying other things like, you mentioned heat cold therapy, light therapy, etc. Are there any other things totally on the outside of the diet that have been pretty beneficial to you that you really didn't expect?
The only thing that's made a significant difference was an infrared sauna.
Okay.
And that's like, especially if I like at the beginning when I was not feeling good or when I was trying to reintroduce foods and not feeling well, an infrared sauna made about a 20% mood increase, which is a lot, especially if you're having a reaction. So the main thing I've noticed is an infrared sauna. I started meditating and exercising, and both of those like combined too definitely make, especially if you do it in the morning, make the rest of my day go well. But I would say, 99% of it was diet. And then if I need to change it up, the infrared sauna and then meditating. I've tried a lot of things. I tried hyperbaric oxygen and cold therapy, and light therapy. And none of those made much of a difference. Like they kind of make me feel warm and fuzzy on the inside, but like nothing major.
Okay.
I think in 2021, you'll have to make your way out here to Super Training Gym in West Sacramento, California to get some lifting in.
I will definitely do that. That sounds like fun.
Nice.
Where can people find you and find out more about you?
I'm on YouTube. I think it's Mikhaila Peterson videos. That's where the podcast is, or on podcasting sites. I'm on Instagram at Mikhaila Peterson. Facebook, I have a page, Mikhaila Peterson, and Twitter, Mikhaila Alexis, because Peterson was too long. Mikhaila Peterson was too long for Twitter.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
And a website.
Thank
you very much, Mark. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
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 Yo, that was dope. I think something that really caught me off guard, and I think it caught Andrew too, was people don't remember pain. That's why they have more than one kid.
All of us were just like laughing. I'm like, oh boy.
And for about 5 seconds, bro, I was like, whoa. Like, yeah, that's
true.
Dang, that is true.
That's huge. I mean, you ever have like a, pretty bad like injury or even illness, like you're just super, super sick and, 5 days goes by and it's gone. And then you're like, as soon as when you're sick, you're like, when I feel better, I'm not going to fucking take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be thankful every day that I wake up and my stomach doesn't hurt or my throat doesn't hurt or, I mean, I remember having that from, when I fell with the squat, it's like I was in just massive amounts of pain, but I don't remember any of it now. I mean, all I can tell you is that it sucked, but I can't really bring back that same level of pain.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, how many people have been hungover or even drunk and been like, oh God, please, if you just help get me through this one night, I promise I won't do it. And what happens? They do it again. Cause well, I mean, I know that's a little bit different because people literally who get drunk can forget like an entire night, but nobody remembers how terrible it was.
Or you got some injury because you didn't warm up consistently and then you're like, once I get healthy, I'm going to start warming up.
Every workout, going to warm up for 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes.
I'm
going to stretch.
Focusing on it.
Everything I need to do. Going to sit in the infrared sauna, get everything all ready to go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was some good stuff, man. She's, she's been through a lot. And, what I find interesting is that I think that, if you had like these boxes to kind of check off in terms of disorders, illness, disordered thinking, and just all these different things, I think that for most everybody, you can kind of check off some boxes for just about everyone. It's just kind of like the level or the degree of depression or anxiety. Like, I think we all have some of it. but then we all don't always suffer from it. It doesn't drag all of us down. And I think there's so many different things that can trigger these things. Like for her, she didn't even know where her depression came from, which is really interesting. Like, that doesn't. So I think a lot of times somebody's like, oh, you're bipolar, or this happened or that happened. Like, you must have had some sort of fucked up background. Like there's, your parents weren't good to you, or something happened, and that's not what happened in my household. And I don't think that's what happened in her household. And I think people often think somebody that gets addicted to drugs came from like a bad upbringing, or came from something, there's, some missing piece of the puzzle. And there very well could be, but it's probably an internal thing rather than something that maybe manifested from the external. But then we do have external input that can really jack everything up too, because if you start to eat foods that don't agree with you, you can kind of see the long laundry list of things that happen with Mikhaila in particular. And so I find it all to be really interesting, but I also think that anyone that tries anyone that has kind of a nutritional intervention or just tries a particular diet for a little while, I think it's in your best interest to give it a shot, because I do think that it will make you feel better. And I think that feeling better is a weird thing to really like quantify. Like, oh, how's the diet going? Oh, I feel great. We kind of hear that all the time, but like, what does it really mean? But if it can kind of push some of these issues to the side, even just a little bit, it's worth it. I think a lot of people feel a lot worse than they even really know. I remember for the first time when I started to lose weight, I was like, I just probably need to lose like another, I might have lost 20 or something at the time. And I was like, I probably just need to lose like another 20 and I'll probably look pretty good in the mirror, And I was wrong. It was like I lost another 20 and I was like, wow, I think I got another 40 to go actually. And I think that when you start to, shake some of these things, and anxiety or depression or some of these things, I think that you almost don't even recognize how much of it you might be suffering from until you start to get into a diet and start to shake some of these things.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate we're not great at remembering the pain. I guess now it is bad, but it'd be interesting, like if you could somehow time travel, be like, hey, remember you 6 months ago? This is what it felt like. And they'd be like, whoa, that was completely different. You can journal, you can log, you can do as much as you can try to do as much as you can, but actually feeling it, and also just being aware, like, oh, I'm not supposed to be tired all the time. Like, I'm not supposed to have back pain, like, that sort of thing.
Smartphones are great for that. Like, I mean,
true,
sometimes
very true, yeah.
I can't compare it, but, we'll look back at old YouTube videos and be like, what the hell was going on with me?
You were so out of shape. Yeah.
No, I'm not even talking about that. Just like, you like, if you take video of yourself, I think it's actually, now that you say that, Andrew, I think that would be a pretty great practice, not just journaling things, but maybe keeping a small video journal for yourself. And it doesn't have to be on the internet or anything, because like I mentioned, I'd look back at old videos and I'd kind of remember where I was in my mind space. And I'd remember certain things, but like, damn, this aspect really improved, or wow, this has really changed. But you don't realize it if you never get to see it. So actually, I think I might start doing that. Journaling's cool, but
bring up something really interesting. Imagine if you did record and you said, I'm just going to talk about how things are at the moment. And so you talk about COVID-19, you talk about your thoughts about that, you talk about the upcoming election. And the weird thing is that, a year from now, you may feel a little bit different, but 20 years from now, you might feel completely, you might have been Republican at the time that you recorded it, and you might have changed your tone, several years later or whatever, or maybe coronavirus ends up being much worse than we anticipated, and you got to change your thoughts about that, or maybe it was less impactful, whatever. And you can kind of see how how on target your own beliefs were or weren't. Oh, here's the current diet that I'm on. You might look back and go, that was kind of dumb. Yeah. I can't believe I did that. I only ate meat, or whatever. Because now, I mean, if you look back into, what about the clothes you wear, wear or wore? You find a picture of yourself and you're like 14. You're like, I used to think that was I used to think I was so, like, I remember being pumped leaving for school, being like, yo, when people see these sneakers or they see this shirt, they're going to flip.
Yeah.
When I get to junior high with these Jinko jeans, it is so on.
FUBU, Sean John, Jinko used to be dope. What else? It's all this stuff from JCPenney. Bro, it was bad.
Pelly Pel.
Yo,
that was the shit.
When I was in middle school, man, my mom used to drop me at school, right? I don't know. Do you ever remember the phase that tall tees were a thing?
Of course.
Yeah.
You do? Okay,
do,
cool.
yeah.
But she dropped me at school and I'd be wearing like my shirt tucked in, looking good. Once I get out of the car, I'd run to the bathroom. I had a tall tee that a friend bought for me because my mom would have never bought me a tall tee. Took it out of my backpack, pulled my pants down, put my tall tee on.
That's great. For whatever reason, whenever you tell me about when you were a kid, I just picture a shrunk down version of you, but you're still jacked. I don't know why.
Because it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
I used to wear Wu Wear a lot too.
Wu wear?
Yeah. Well, Wu-Tang Clan. They had their clothing line.
Yeah.
Bring it back,
so
bro.
dope.
Bring it back.
What's funny is like whenever I'm like either just tired of wearing something or just like, I don't know, this is going to blow away in the wind. If I throw it away, my dad gets so mad. So I give him like, hey dad, like these are like, this is going either donation or trash. Like, have at it. He gets all excited, and like he will wear a bunch of Wu Wear shirts from back in the day.
There we go.
And the funny thing is because back then baggy everything was like that was it. So a lot of that stuff would fit me still pretty big today. So like yeah, I might have to bring it all back.
Coming back to the carnivore thing real quick, I think it is really cool, and it's also kind of sad. Because there are a lot of individuals that like are in my life, right? That when they talk about going healthier, it's okay. I got to start eating my oatmeal, whole grains. I got to get rid of meat, and it's literally that direction. And they don't end up feeling better, but it's what they're told. It's what their doctor tells them to do. And no matter what you may try to talk to them about, you just can't convince them. So I think it's really cool. Like someone like Mikhaila, I feel like. Because she doesn't look like us, that message is going to get to so many other people that typically would be like, meat's so unhealthy and toxic and acidic. They'll actually listen because it's coming from her, which is why I'm going to use this episode to send to some people that maybe should take a look at it.
Haven't you seen What the Health? I can't have meat.
God dang it, man.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, when it comes to fat and they say that they can't eat like something like a ribeye or something like that, I think they're just thinking like, like they're like fat has been kind of demonized, and then they're also just thinking like their thinking is not completely wrong. It's like, you're okay. So let me ask you a question. Why do you think you should remove, red meat? And they might say, cholesterol and these things. Some of these things you can't like unwind all of it, but you could just kind of say, really, if you were to remove, fatty meats from your diet, it would reduce the overall amount of calories, perhaps, and it could help. But, are you going to work on, trying to get rid of some of your other habits? Because I know you like to go to fast food, or I know you like to do these things. So I think people are they're kind of thinking like, I'll get rid of this steak, which is a weird thing to think to get rid of, in my opinion, because it's a lot of times it could be, you could eat it out, I guess, but a lot of times like a home cooked kind of meal versus, that you're not going to get rid of all these other shitty habits that you have, drinking soda and whatever the hell else. Those are the kind of main perpetrators, I think, to get rid of first, because they're probably, while it might not be easy, it's probably the simplest thing to move towards.
Yeah, and then back to Nsima's point about like, I'm going to get healthy, I'm going to get rid of meat, I'm going to eat salads, going to eat a bunch of carbs or whatever it may be. Then they start feeling bad. Then what happens? Like, I've tried every diet, it just doesn't work for me. No matter what I do, I can't lose weight or whatever. I just can't get healthy because they're just still not doing it right. Like they're going from one extreme, which is everything, to another extreme of having more of everything but less meat now. Which is probably the only thing that was good in their diet. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's crazy, man. Especially her situation, the amount of things that she's had to deal with, that she's dealt with, and that's gotten better. It's, someone's going to be able to find something that they deal with within that, And then I think that one of the really cool things is just the effect that it does have on mood disorders and bipolar disorder, potentially other type of mood disorders. It's, I think that really, really, really piques my interest, just because depression is, like, first off, it's something that's been on the rise for years, but so many people deal with it at some level. And how many people would find it, alleviating to understand that if I just kind of change the foods that I eat, I could probably really be able to deal with this.
I think another tough thing sometimes that when someone does have a mood disorder, they lean towards drugs, right? And then for people that haven't leaned towards drugs, or even people that have come off of drugs, the only thing that's still fun for them is food. That's like kind of the only, like, extra, I guess, like entertainment or fun, or maybe another word would be like escape, because that's all anyone's ever trying to do is just escape reality. Whether you're talking about sucking down some coffee or having some kratom or smoking a joint, doing mushrooms, really any of it. I mean, even exercising is like kind of a natural way to kind of escape sitting around and getting too caught up in your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. And so I think it makes it really hard. I know a lot of people that have, some of the people I'm thinking about that have some mental disorders and mental disease rather. They're very heavy, so then it's like, well, shit, man, as much as I would love to see them kind of turn the corner and change things, I know, like, it's like, man, you kind of just, they're already sedated from drugs, from drugs that they get prescribed to them, so that they can be a little bit more of an even mind. And then it's like, well, you're going to kind of take away the last thing that they really love, it's like, which might be food. And then it's just like, man, it just sucks. But you still know, like, shit, man, I know if they tried it that, they would at least be able to see some of the impact would be felt. But yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. And then if, people do think that it's like, oh, eating meat's not going to, make me feel better. Even if you do or don't have any, depression issues or anything like that, it's just, you're going to probably get in better shape and you'll probably like yourself a little bit more. I know that sounds a little shallow if you aren't, kind of in that direction, but I mean, it's just the truth, right? Like,
look at the people around here that have lost weight, and just look at the difference in how often they smile. You smile a lot more when your face is a little leaner, when you're a little less fat. Like, you're just, you feel, whether it's true or not, you feel like you look better. Like, you feel like you're representing yourself a little bit better, and you're kind of proud of yourself, and I think it creates happiness in some ways that I don't think you can end up getting to, and maybe the thought process you had about yourself before wasn't good, and that's okay to admit that. And maybe the thought process of, like, now all of a sudden you're happy because you lost a bunch of weight, maybe that's not great either, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Smokey's still angry though.
Oh, he's like 5'2", I think.
Poor guy.
He gets picked on a lot too by this guy.
He gets picked on by me?
Mm-hmm.
It's because he's always late. He never gets here on time.
Yeah, why can't he just be on time?
I don't understand it. It's like such a responsibility. Get here at 6. He's here at 6:05. I never understood it.
And you can set whatever schedule you want for him. He's still going to be late.
But I've been able to teach him. I've been able to tell him, maybe just set your alarm 10 minutes earlier in the morning. You can give yourself that time, do the things you got to do. Get here on time. Maybe get here 10 minutes early for once.
Well, you taught him, but it's still not working.
Every now and then, though, he's doing a little bit better. He's doing a little bit better.
Traffic today was insane.
Yeah, what the hell happened?
I have no idea.
Accident.
Yeah, that was crazy. My because like before I left, because you guys were saying that there was traffic, so I checked and Google Maps said that I would be here by 6:30. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like let's go. I didn't get here till after 7, and it normally takes me only like 20 or so minutes to get here, like period. So I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
That's crazy.
I was supposed to lift with Smokey this morning, and we still lifted, but it was like. I think he was going to get here at 5, and then he got here at 6. Yeah, typical. He got here at 6:20.
Typical.
He needs to account for traffic.
Late.
Hey,
why didn't he just account?
Just another excuse.
So I was I was coming in after Smokey, and I texted him, or he texted me, and he showed me the traffic or whatever, and then I was like, well, can't I go like a different way? Because I know there's some like back roads back here. He's like, no, man. He's like, it's only, and after he texted me back, I was already past our exit.
Oh, God.
So I was like, oh, now, and I saw all the traffic on the other side of the freeway. I'm like, no, I just got to go sit and all that shit. But it, I don't know, gave me something to do, I guess, get to move around. But then I was on the side of the freeway, which is like, you know, there's these semi trucks scary going by. I'm like, this is not a good way to end it all right here.
And this was after, so crossing Midtown, a fucking taco truck damn near ran me over. Like,
Damn.
It was bad. I'm like, oh shit. Like, I never honk. I never like, I mean, I'm pretty chill, but I'm like, hey, I'm right here. Like, you cannot see me. And I don't know. I had to go off into the median.
Taco trucks are important though.
They are. And you know what? Now that I live in Elk Grove, there's no taco trucks out there.
Hurts the soul, doesn't it?
Not one taco truck.
Is that good or bad?
I mean, depending on how you look at it, I see it as a fucking atrocity because...
But maybe less taco trucks, less fireworks being shot off randomly.
I will take that, yeah.
Andrew, I have a question for you now.
Here
Actually.
we go.
Okay, so we just talked to Mikhaila, and you know, we've all talked about carnivore. I know you've done carnivore before.
Twice.
How long did you do it?
The first go, I want to say was, I think 3 months. No, maybe somewhere between 2 and 3 months. 2 and
3 months?
This was going from kind of whatever straight into that. It was after we had Sean Baker on the podcast. He was talking about inflammation, and so I'm like, dude, my back's killing me. He's like, oh, you'll be great on carnivore. It was pretty successful. I love carbs. You know, I enjoy that, and I was already pretty thin, so having that didn't make sense. But I'm like, let's see what happens. And that was actually the first time where I was like, whoa, like diet makes this big of an impact on me. Like I just, you know, this was I don't know how many, like a year or two ago. I can't even remember.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've learned a lot since then, but before that, I just figured like, oh, well, I'm pretty slender, so I don't think diet's going to really affect me that much. And holy shit, I was wrong. And then after that, I started in vertical diet because I was, you know, like I said, smaller, thinner. Then the next time was right before we had Paul Saladino on, and I could not do it. I had like the worst diarrhea for it was 3.5 weeks. And
well, I mean, that's expected, right?
It is expected, but the first time I didn't get it. And then this time I did. And I want to say my diet was even healthier this time around, but maybe because I was having like a lot of ground beef and a lot of rice, maybe the carnivore diet didn't appreciate the rice that was kind of hanging out in my gut. And maybe that's why it just annihilated me. But after that, because Paul was like, oh, dude, just give it one more week. And I'm like, okay, another week of shitting. He's like, dude, just keep going. And I'm like, I'm calling it at 3.5 weeks because like, I'm like, this is too much for me.
Okay.
But yeah, since then, very much meat based.
Yeah.
You know, majority of the diet, I'm still having 230 to 40 grams of protein every day.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, I think that happens to a lot of people. Like sometimes if you just, if I still go just like all meat, you know, I kind of liquefy some of the food, but it also kind of depends. I notice it depends a little bit on the kind of meat, you know, like if I'm eating the fattier stuff, that seems to have more of an impact. But yeah, I've been feeling really good lately. Everything's been going really good. I have potatoes here and there. I have rice here and there. I have some fruit here and there. But yeah, it's just keeping the protein really, really high. It's, I try to get in 400, but I think I always end up at like 350 or something like that.
Jesus.
Yeah, I totally agree with the leaner cuts. That's why, you know, this episode's sponsored by Piedmontese, but that's why I love it so much. I feel so much better on it. Yeah. If I get a big box store ribeye, I personally feel slow. I feel heavy. I feel it sounds weird, but I can eat like 2 of them in a row and I will feel kind of like that sick, hungry feeling. I don't know if that makes sense, but like I'm satiated. I'm not satisfied. But when I have like 1 or 2 flat iron steaks, like I'm like, yeah, that was fun. You know, like it was great. I will have it with, you know, something else, but I'm not sure. And those are super lean.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
They're so good. 2
of them will only give you like, I think 8 grams of fat.
Yeah.
Anyone who's hungry that really struggles with their diet, just smash protein, you know, eat more protein, get some chicken breasts, get some egg whites, like whatever way you got to do it, tilapia, or you can have just a lean cut of steak. But like red meat, a lot of times will continue to raise your fat levels as well. So you might want to, with your steak, you might want to have a chicken breast, or with whatever meal it is that you're eating, you might want to have a couple of egg whites. I found it to be really helpful to the point where when I get done with my last meal, I just don't really, I don't care about food anymore, where that was always really hard for me. I was, you know, sit down and watch TV. I'm always like, oh, let me just have something. And it, you know, I'd usually do pretty good. It was still just a protein shake or something like that, but I don't even feel the need for any of that anymore. The protein just really kind of changed stuff. And I've only been doing it for a few weeks, so I need to do it a lot longer to really just kind of see how it's assisting. But I also, in the gym, even with minimal amount of carbs, because like in a given day, on a training day, like might have some post-workout as well. So I might have 100, but a lot of times it's probably like 40, 60, somewhere in there. And just good pumps and everything. And I think a lot of it has to do with just eating like a crazy amount of protein. I think it just will turn into some glucose for you if you need it. And I feel like I can train really hard. Like everything just feels a little bit better. I'm starting to feel a little stronger again. So all that's going good. But like I said, I need to do it for probably a couple more weeks, kind of see. And I got a couple other people that are messing with it too, that are on diets. And I'm just like, well, just like, oh, I eat this amount of calories. And I'm like, well, just add 50 grams of protein rather. Add 50 grams of protein and just see, like, are you a similar body weight? Are you heading in the same direction still? Because if you are, it's nice to know that you have that option. You don't have to really do it, but it's nice to know that you have that option, because I think that's usually the biggest problem when it comes to nutrition or when it comes to a diet, is just to try to freaking stay on it, because you get hungry. Get really hungry.
Every now and then I, like from what you were saying there, I'll think about how crazy it is that back like years ago, right? It was told to me so much that you need this amount of carbs to fuel your performance. You need to eat this like 200, 300, whatever, to be able to fuel this type of performance that you're going to do. And now, barely eating close to that much, and even training fasted at times, at least with some electrolytes or whatever, I feel great within training, whether it's jujitsu or in the gym. It's like, I think a big part of that also is just like mental. Like when you see all these athletes also doing this and then you don't, you kind of feel like, oh, I'm missing out on something, or I'm not doing, you know, it's not working the right way. But it's crazy how well you can perform in the gym or whatever cardio that you're doing without an insane amount or even a typical amount of carbohydrates. They're not that necessary.
I would agree with that 100%. I also think that when it comes to nutrition, the worst thing you can do is get in the way of your own body. So your body, your metabolism, it knows how to fucking do everything the right way. But if you start to eat Snickers bars and pizza and stuff like that, then you're kind of disrupting what it would normally want to do. And if you somehow have decent genetics and that's not interrupted, then your nutrition probably won't really ever make that big of a difference. I mean, that's why we see such a wide variety of athletes being able to have different diets. You know, we would really see like the best of the best even would have to have their diet like, you know, intact, and they'd have to adhere to a very specific protocol if it was the case that in the third round of an MMA fight that you just bonk out and you have no more energy. But we don't really hear that. We hear many different diets being utilized. We hear a lot of different, and usually, you know, that again, the answer usually always lies, you know, not always lies in the middle, but it's usually in the middle, right? It's usually like, hey, let's just use some common sense. You could probably use a good protein source. You do need carbohydrates because you are putting in a tremendous amount of effort. Probably don't need 500 grams. Probably a little excessive, but on a day of a fight, or, you know, when you've got these tough training sessions, you know, use it accordingly, but use it as a weapon of energy. Like that's really all that it is. And then the fat, I would just say when it comes to fat, the fat obviously is a great energy source, but I wouldn't even really look at it that way. I would just eat enough fat to make sure that your hormones don't go out of whack. Mm-hmm. And that would be, different for each person.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I know everyone is different, but like, what's a minimum amount of fat somebody should be consuming?
No less than, I would say, 60 in most cases. Like I even a very light man or woman, I would be like, if you're eating 40 is typically too low for everybody, honestly. Mm-hmm. 60, I would say, is minimum. 50 is okay if you're super light, like if you're 140, 150 pounds, 40. But 60 would be the low end of fats I think people should be eating, just as a general statement. And
how much protein do you think you're getting in?
Me?
Like per day, yeah.
Averaging upwards of 220. Like the minimum I have is usually 220. But this 400 stuff Mark's talking about, I've never done that. That's a lot of meat.
It's hard.
Yeah. You getting any of that through protein shakes too, or?
Yeah, I have. It's been helpful to, just eat anything that has protein in it. So I'll eat egg whites to try to jack it up a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's really, what gets to be hard is I usually only eat like twice a day. So that gets to be really hard. But a lot of times I'll have a protein shake with a meal, and this protein shake might have 75 grams of protein in it. And then my meal has like 100, so if I do that even just like twice a day, then I'm starting to get close to where I wanted to get to.
Amen. The body is shocking.
It's a lot of food though.
I think we talked about this a little bit before, but I mean, you're eating, or you've had phases also, but also right now you're eating a little bit less than you used to in the past, but you're maintaining your body weight and even gaining, correct?
Yeah.
Like that's the same thing for me. My body has been the same weight with all the activity, all the lifting, all the jiu-jitsu, all that stuff. And even though some days I'm definitely in a deficit because of the lack of fat and lack of carbs, it doesn't move. 240, 245, 246 every single day. I never would have expected that, especially eating the way we do right now.
Yeah, you might go up a little bit and you might go down a little bit, but in general, you got they call it like a set point, right? You have like a set point where your body always kind of goes to. And yeah, I'm the same way. I came back from wherever the hell I was, Utah, I guess. And because I've been, on this diet where I'm doing the protein leveraging, I was like really curious to kind of see like what I would weigh when I came back. And I was actually like 4 or 5 pounds lighter just because I just didn't have the amount of time to put towards the food, that I do when I'm here. But yeah, it's been working. It's been working great. I'm really excited to kind of see what I can do with it. I saw an announcement from Phil Heath just a couple weeks ago that he's doing the Olympia, and I was like, oh, I'm going to kind of diet with him. Like I'm going to, even though like I'm not going to bodybuilding diet. I probably won't take it to that. I won't take it to that. What I'd like to do is not take it to that extreme of all the cardio and all the other shit that I did, but see how lean I can get kind of without some of that little extra side things that I was doing.
That's exciting.
Yeah. See what happens. Why not? It's, I think it's like the mid-September or something. So.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to say, hopefully you're not bodybuilding because I don't want to see you get divorced.
Yeah. Yeah. No bodybuilding, right?
I'm just glad Phil Heath's coming back.
I know. That's pretty cool.
That'll be interesting. He wants that title back.
The comeback.
Take us on out of here, Andrew.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. If you guys liked what you were hearing, hold on. There we go. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe. Hit that bell notification. Uh-oh. Hit a like for that. Look at bam. Oh, my goodness. Uh-oh.
Oh, the biceps.
Hopefully people have 4K for that.
Damn, you still got it, bro.
Yeah.
It never really left.
Bam! Suckers. Yeah, hit that bell notification because we do these live all the time. So if you guys want to interact with us on air, we take fan questions. We do all kinds of fun stuff like that. Please make sure you're following the podcast at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. If you want to get in touch with Nsima, how can they do so?
At Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube. At Nsima Inyang on Twitter. Mark.
Have you ever had striated glutes?
Yes. I don't want them back.
He's like, I had those yesterday.
Dude, sitting on a toilet was the coldest experience of my life.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Oh my God, bro. You sit on a toilet, you it's like, okay, your dick would just shrivel. Like,
of course.
You'd just be like,
The negative side effects of striated glutes.
not good.
Strength is never weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch y'all later.